Do you ever wonder if you've gone insane? If you're going quite mad? If you've lost your wits? Well, if so, this video might be for you. Of course, it is possible that you have gone insane, and that you are insane, and that I'm insane, and that we're all insane. Distance from reality and truth and flow and freedom. But it's also possible that what feels like madness is actually just a symptom of returning back to realness, returning back to an awakening, to awareness of who you are, what life is, etc, etc. I'm standing around in this field of thistles. I don't know if you can see the thistles. Here's an example of the thistles in questions. Ooh, in question, not questions. And that's what we're going to explore in this video. Madness, waking up, seeing how it feels to ride from an unreal state to a real one, and how to get the most out of the process without being destroyed by it. It could be a great video, it could be a shit one. We'll find out. Perhaps one of the most beautiful things about life is that there's so much variety. We're all human, we have a lot of similarities, we're all on the journey from fragmentation to wholeness, and yet there are so many wicked and wonderful things in various shades and colors and textures that we get to experience as we walk that basic path. This applies to the ways that we go mad too. You can go completely insane at one end of the spectrum, where you start seeing things, you start talking to people that aren't there, or figures that aren't there, or just something that's not there because you're projecting your unconscious mind out into the world around you, and then you start to just treat reality as something other than what it is, and people call that insane. Who knows if it is, really? And then at the other end of the spectrum, there's just the more kind of day-to-day insanity, the day-to-day madness of believing things that aren't true, having emotions come up that maybe are inappropriate or an over or under reaction, something like that. And then there's the kind of madness that I want to talk about in this video, where you start to feel like you're losing your grasp of reality. What you thought was once real no longer is. Maybe it's your image of yourself, the things you thought you wanted to do with your life, the things you thought once made sense and were valuable and important, the relationships that you've got but maybe don't make sense to you anymore. Basically, the most common form of madness being this idea that our interpretations of reality, all the little stories and narratives and things like that once helped us make sense of ourselves, the world and reality, no longer seems to fit. And when we're going through that, it really does feel maddening, because we don't know what to replace those beliefs with, and we're just in this weird place where it's us and life kind of working together, kind of not, and we feel like we're truly going mad because we don't know who we are anymore or what life is. One of the reasons that it's so easy to slip into this kind of mundane day-to-day madness is that we all have different interpretations of reality, and we treat these interpretations as being reality itself, and so we live through this filter, which is really just our own emotional relationship with ourselves and what we're prepared to face about ourselves in life. And then we find ourselves in situations and relationships with other people that are doing the exact same thing. So everybody is in this kind of state of being where they have interpretations of life instead of actually just living life. We need these interpretations to function, but the problem is the interpretations, like I keep saying, are not life itself. And so eventually, in many cases, life can suddenly just shake us, and when it does shake us, those interpretations go all over the place because they were never real in the first place. The thing is, when life does shake us, it does it to see what real things remain. And so a lot of the time you'll get shaken, and then you have to go through this process of reawakening, which feels like going mad, but actually it's the opposite. It means you're finally becoming sane, perhaps for the first time in your life. Let me give you some examples. Two that I can think of. One, when I was living in Tokyo about 100 years ago, and life shook me and said, right, Ollie Anderson, suddenly I've got to tell you that you've got kidney failure, so you need to go back to England and get a kidney transplant. That shattered my whole view of everything. My view of myself, my view of life, my view of the world. And then I had to go through a process of rebuilding those interpretations that I would say literally drove me. Here's some nice trees to distract you from my sad tale. I had to go through this process of rebuilding my relationship with myself, life, reconfiguring the concepts I use to make sense of it all. It was a crazy time. Other examples are when you might go through a breakup with someone. So you think everything's fine, the relationship is chill, everything's kind of in a nice rhythm, you're going through the motions. This is a wonderful tree. I do believe it's a Scots pine that has been shaped and chiseled by the wind. Maybe that's a metaphor right there, because the only reason that tree looks like that is so it can deal with the harsh conditions. I just gave you a lamentable story about my life. Anyway, the other example is if you break up with someone, you think the relationship's fine, and then suddenly out of the blue, the other person's just not into it anymore, and so it's over. And then again, your interpretations have to be updated. Your interpretation of yourself and who you are, your interpretation of your future, your interpretation of the other people, all the interpretations. And until you get the new ones in place, which means you find something real that you can rebuild with, then you probably will feel like you're going a bit mad. So what I want to tell you in this video is that you're not going mad, and it's actually a good thing to go through things like this, because when you get to the other side, whatever interpretations you pick up may not be completely real, but they'll be probably more real than the ones you were living with for at least a certain period of time in your life. Here's another view of the Scots pines. I'm not a botanist or anything, so I might be wrong, but I think that's the kind of tree that they are. There you are, have a look. The reason they look like that is because it's windy as fuck up here normally, and so they just get leaves at the top so they can survive. Welcome and thank you for listening to my TED Talk. So we all need these interpretations of the truth, of reality, in order to survive and to function in the world. We're fragmented creatures in fragmented bodies on a fragmented planet. We're never going to be fully whole, perhaps, until we get the sweet release of death and we return to the whole, we become one with everything. Who knows? Maybe death is just a portal and we end up doing something else in a fragmented way. Let's not get onto that right now. But anyway, the point is, we're fragmented creatures, fragmented bodies, and we need interpretations to function in the world around us. I need to be able to have an interpretation of where I end and you begin, for example, so that we don't become all enmeshed and think that we're one thing when we're not, things like that. The problem is, these interpretations often get hijacked by the ego, which is not your amigo, and then it causes unnecessary friction and frustration in your life. And then when your ego gets challenged, you start to feel like you're going mad, because you feel like the foundation your life is built upon, which is just an interpretation of the truth, not the truth itself. You feel like the foundation is gone and you don't know where you stand. The reason the ego comes up with these interpretations is really simple. I've talked about it a lot on this channel, so I'll just give the abridged version because people are probably sick of hearing about it, but the newbies might need to know. Basically, it goes like this. We have unresolved emotional stuff, shame, guilt, and trauma. That causes us to disown who we really are, or parts of who we really are. And then we have to create an even more fragmented version of ourselves so that we can survive in the world and convince ourselves and other people that we're acceptable. The price of this is that we send the shadow self into hiding. And so all of the good and bad qualities about ourselves that we've disowned, we just pretend they don't exist. That's why we become further fragmented. And so the ego, which is built by shame, guilt, and trauma, has to keep resisting life. And the way it does that is that it creates a belief system on top of the self-image that it gives us. And these beliefs really just reinforce the ego more than help us to uncover and live the truth. The reason that the ego does this is to protect us in the short term. The ego is not evil or anything. It's just a filter between you and life. And that filter is held together by the belief system, which is all your interpretations that stem from the ego and your need to resist life, basically, emotional resistance. Resistance seems like it's protecting you, but actually it's the source of most suffering. Because when we resist life, we can't be in life, and then we can't flow in the way that we want to. And so the ego gives us these beliefs, basically, these interpretations, but then every so often, something happens, like we said, you get shaken, and as you get shaken, you start to awaken, because the shaking is always life trying to call you back in. And when that happens, the foundation of those beliefs goes, and then you start to feel mad or insane because all the familiar things you once relied on are no longer there for you. What we can say then is that if you feel like you're going mad, you're probably not. Probably. It is possible that you are going mad and that I don't even exist. Like, this video is just a phantasm in your mind that you're projecting onto your laptop or your phone, which is actually turned off. So if that is the case, you can ignore what I'm saying. But in general, when we think we're going mad, we get that feeling like nothing makes sense anymore. It's not because we are actually going mad. It's because all of the little things that helped us to once deal with uncertainty and the unfamiliar and the unknown are no longer there to protect us from the chaos of life. The chaos really just being all of the unknown things that are beyond the little bubble or window of interpretations that we were using in the first place. And so when that happens, really the way that we choose to react or to respond to the chaos is going to help us to either move towards sanity in the sense of having a slightly better interpretation of reality based on where we now find ourselves, or we're going to resist that and try to control the process because we're scared to let go, and then we're going to go even more insane because that resistance and control make us feel like life is against us when really we are with life, and it's just trying to wake us up to an awareness of the truth. So I'm actually wearing my shorts again, which is a terrible mistake, perhaps, because first of all, the thistles have found me again. Here they are. So I actually do like the thistles. There's even more here than there were at the start of the video. But also, we all know the conspiracy about Bill Gates and how he's put ticks all over the place that are probably going to give me Lyme disease, and then that'll be the end of me. My interpretation of reality is going to become even more fucked up, and I won't be able to do any of the things that I like doing. So fuck you, Bill Gates. So I actually do have Windows 11 on my laptop, or laptops. I got two laptops for some reason. So we'll know if they stop working that Bill Gates is listening to the fields and that I'm being punished. I swear something just bit me. What the? Anyway, if you're going mad, like me, then what we need to do, or you need to do, is change your relationship with the uncertainty, with the chaos, the unknown, the unfamiliar. And what that basically means is that you have to learn to ride through it and to learn from it instead of just projecting what you once knew but have now lost onto it. That might sound a bit technical, and I suppose it kind of is, but really you can do that. There's thistles all over the place, like I said. I'm trying not to scream every 2 seconds as I get stabbed, but I am in England, so that also makes sense. But anyway, there are two things that we need to learn to do in order to be able to familiarize ourselves again with the chaos and the unknown in a real way, so we don't feel like we are going mad. And basically that is to look at two levels of our lives, or our relationship with life. We look at the level of resistance and control. So I will talk about that next, and then we can wrap up this video and we can all go back to our lives. Resistance and control are really simple and easy to understand. They actually cause many of the problems in our lives because they're always a reaction to some unreal thing in our head that causes us to fear life itself, and finding out who we actually are as life and uncertainty in the form of chaos shows us what's actually true. Resistance is basically when you resist your own emotions. You resist the fear that comes up, you resist the shame that comes up, you resist anything. What you need to do to overcome resistance is just learn to be with your feelings and to let things go. I made a video already about emotional mastery and how emotions are just emotion, energy, emotion. They're like a wave. It rises, it reaches a peak, and then it goes, and then problem solved. No more emotion to deal with. If you understand that, then you don't need to resist your emotions. You can just get out of the way and let them do whatever it is that they need to do, so they can be integrated or just let go of, and then you're done. The problem is when we have all of this uncertainty and unfamiliarity and things like that, it triggers our fear, and our fear brings up all of our old survival mechanisms, which we've actually already lost, which is why we're feeling insane in the first place. And so we try to deal with our current reality in a way that no longer has any connection to reality. We use old patterns, things like that, and instead all we need to do is just let it be. Realize that the fear you feel is in most cases just false evidence appearing real. F-E-A-R, false evidence appearing real. And if you understand that, you can go with it, and then you'll get where you need to be. If resistance is about your emotional stuff, then control is about your actions and how they're unreal. Really, they're two sides of the same coin, because ultimately it all comes down from your relationship with yourself and life, and how deep you're willing to go based on your levels of fear. But anyway, control is really any attempt to just manipulate life so that it feels like all of the things that you've actually lost by being shaken from life are still kind of there. So for example, maybe your shame told your ego that the only way you're going to fill the void was to become a billionaire. And so you put money on a pedestal. Money is a good thing, but you were treating it as an ultimate thing, when actually the only ultimate is life itself and your relationship with it, going deeper into wholeness. And so anyway, your ego made you think that you could only really feel good about yourself and life if you became a billionaire. And so you were just endlessly chasing money. No matter what, you would sell your soul to make a couple of £100 or whatever. And even now, once you've been shaken by life, that is still with you, and so you start manipulating things to try and make that belief still seem true, because you want to believe what you want to believe, not what's actually true, which is that if you put something on a pedestal, it's eventually going to fall off, and sometimes it's going to land on top of you and crush you. And so control is just any attempt to manipulate life so that you don't have to listen to it, forcing it instead of flowing with it, pushing yourself upon it instead of allowing it to flow through you and help you find out who you really are and what it's all about. Well, this is literally the rustiest gate I've ever seen in my life. Not very exciting, but I suppose it is notable. How often do you see the rustiest gate you've ever seen in your entire life? The reason we fear the chaos and the unknown is because we think it's a threat, because of the fear of false evidence appearing real. We think it's going to destroy us. And so we try and resist, we try and control, so we don't have to go through the process of learning from the uncertainty. Really, that's what it's all about. The madness, the feeling of going mad, means that some kind of learning is about to come your way. You're on the threshold of entering a new season of your life, but you're holding on to the old one. And so we can summarize a lot of this stuff about resistance and control by saying that a really important shift, a really helpful shift to make, is to shift from seeing the uncertainty as a threat to seeing it as a teacher that you can respect. Reality is always going to give you the medicine that you need, because reality always puts you on a foundation of acceptance, the most solid foundation of them all. And so really, the only end result of a learning journey is that you go deeper into acceptance, you go deeper into truth. So next time the uncertainty creeps up on you and you feel like you're going mad because you're projecting your fear into it and seeing it as a threat, catch yourself and remind yourself that it's actually your teacher. It's going to show you what you need to know and what you need to do to become the realest version of yourself that's available to you right now. Well, this is just a quick tick update. As far as I know, the ticks haven't found me yet, but I did start speaking in tongues just before I press record. So I narrowly escaped lacerating myself, climbing over this barbed wire to escape from the ticks. I'd just like you to know that I succeeded, and I am still tick free as far as I know. We shall find out though. Well, I've rambled and raved in an insane manner in this video, which is kind of appropriate given the topic of going mad and losing all sense of sense. The sun is setting behind me, or getting ready to. It's the end of another hazy summer day here on planet Earth, and that's kind of appropriate because we're reaching the end of the video, although there is a little bit more. What I want to say is that if you feel like you're going mad, you absolutely aren't. In most cases. Most cases. You could be, like I said. In most cases, you've just reached the end of one season of your life and you're not ready to let the next one in. And so you need to go through a process of awareness, acceptance, and action so that you can allow the ego to change form and loosen its grip. But more importantly, you can allow the shadow self to come up, which is always in a battle with the ego, and you can start to take action from a real place where you trust yourself and you trust life to do what needs to happen. I just realized I'm kind of blocked in. There's a wall there and a wall there. That's a good metaphor for the ego, being blocked inside. Okay, I'll work with it. So the 3 steps are awareness, acceptance, and action. These are the steps I use in my coaching containers. You can read about it in my book or books if you so desire, or you can keep watching these YouTube videos, or both. Awareness means you deconstruct the ego. You become aware of all of the false beliefs it's asked you to cling to, all the systems and structures it's put in your life that are holding you back or making you do things that aren't real. Acceptance means you start to integrate the shadow, which is always hiding behind the ego. The ego and the shadow are always in a constant battle. And if you understand that, you can get the ego out of the way and make room for all the real parts of yourself, good and bad, to start to resurface. And then action is trust. You trust yourself to do what you can do, but then you trust life to do what you can't do, which basically just means that you don't resist and you don't control. You stay calm and you let life fill in the blanks when that time comes. You can do that by learning to regulate your nervous system, integrate your emotions, and then accelerate, taking that real action. If you go through that process, awareness, acceptance, and action, then your transformation is going to start to carry you with life instead of against it. And if you do that, you're not going to feel like you're going mad anymore. You're going to feel like you've let go of an old season, you've stepped into a new one, and you can start learning from it and with it as you become more real. So I made it to the other side of the wall. I'm sure there's a metaphor there about overcoming the ego, although maybe the other side of the wall is a bit more real, it's more chaotic. Maybe that's a metaphor for the shadow self. Who knows? If you feel like you're going mad, then you're probably not. That's what we can say from this video. Unless you actually are, or you've been bitten by a tick and you have Lyme disease and it's somehow impacted your brain. Fuck you, Bill Gates. Once again, I am totally gonna have computer problems when I get home. Anyway, if you're starting to feel like you're going mad, you're probably not, so you can relax. But what is happening is, you're at the start of this transformational journey. You're starting to become aware, and you need to go through the next stages of acceptance and action. And so that's what I would recommend. Keep building that awareness, become accepting of life as it is, instead of believing what you want to believe for the ego, and then start trusting and letting go so you can act in a real way. You can go through that process alone. It works, many people do it. If you need some guidance, you can book a free call with me on my website, ollieanderson.co.uk/talk. I'll give you a free coaching session and we'll see where you are on your own transformational journey and how the ticks may or may not be affecting your life. But other than that, I hope this video helps you. I hope you stay safe out there. Hope you're having a great summer. It's glorious, and peace to you.